American diplomats are heading home from the consulate in Chengdu. The consulate officially closed on Monday morning. Now, this is the latest development in what is this tit-for-tat row between China and the United States, which comes just 1 week after Washington closed the Chinese consulate in Houston, in Texas. Both sides accuse the other of endangering national security, and both countries deny wrongdoing. Let's bring in CNN's correspondent David Culver, who is reporting from Chengdu. What are you hearing there?
And Becky, I had actually hoped to have the former consulate now as our backdrop, but while we were there, the crowds were getting so big and so intense and rather passionate at times, we actually had to move to another location. So instead you have the backdrop of the city skyline of Chengdu, a city of 16.5 million that as of today no longer has a U.S. consulate.
After some 35 years, the U.S. flag lowered for the last time Monday at the now shuttered U.S. consulate in Chengdu, China. Only state-controlled media allowed to capture these images of Chinese officials taking control of the property. The U.S. mission in China tweeting this farewell video, adding, "We will miss you forever." Over the weekend, the U.S. insignia taken down, moving trucks seen entering the consulate compound, a bus pulling out, on board U.S. diplomatic staff. U.S. Foreign Service officers were flown in from other consulates in China to help with the rushed move out. They are now headed to Beijing, to the U.S. Embassy. Firecrackers ignited outside the consulate on Friday when China announced its closure, a celebration of sorts for some locals in Chengdu, who since have packed in to get a shot of history.
This is the portion where the crowd really builds. You can see a lot of the uniformed police officers, but you also see some plainclothes police officers making their way through the crowd too. And it gets to be a rather, well, popular tourist site. But you'll notice a lot of people staring at us because obviously we're foreigners and they're taking pictures of us because we too are part of this tourist attraction. Anyhow, pass through.
In shutting it down, China's foreign ministry claimed U.S. personnel were engaging in activities that were harmful to China's national security interests, a near-identical claim to what the U.S. alleged of the Chinese consulate in Houston, U.S. officials saying it was involved in an illegal spying effort, a claim China denied. The closing of the Chengdu U.S. consulate has a major impact for many Chinese students looking to start or continue their studies in the U.S. They come here to apply for visas. Graduate student Ber Shunyang among them. He supports China's decision to retaliate, but wishes it had not come to this.
Emotionally, that's not what I want to see. I want these two great nations to in good relationships.
Months of rising tensions have now pinned the world's two largest economies against one another on a variety of fronts, leading some to label it a new Cold War.
But most U.S. people are very nice. We have so many close friends from the U.S. So we think, why we should go to war?
Professor Long Xinchun runs the Chengdu Institute of World Affairs, an international relations think tank. He says he does not fault the U.S. for being tough on China.
But we were worried about the irrational decision, sometimes crazy decision to China.
He points in particular to the Trump administration and Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, who says this is about protecting the free world from a totalitarian regime.
We must induce China to change in more creative and assertive ways because Beijing's actions threaten our people and our prosperity.
Channels of communication closing up and moving out as China and the U.S. drift further apart.
And a short time ago, Becky, we did hear from a State Department spokesperson acknowledging the closure. They say in part we're disappointed by the Chinese Communist Party's decision and will strive to continue our outreach to the people in this important region through our other posts in China. And the people they reference in particular are those of Tibet because the Chengdu consulate here handled relations with that region. Becky.
It's fascinating, David. I wonder, are people generally aware that you have spoken to in China that all of this tit-for-tat US-China spat is coming just shy of 100 days from the US election?
I think that's what surprised me most in talking to a lot of the folks here, is that they are very aware that this is an election season. And part of them has this understanding that there are things that are going to be done that perhaps are a bit irrational, as one man put it, crazy. At the same time, though, even if it's part of just an election season, they also recognize that it's doing damage that can go well beyond the election and can go into several different administrations, quite frankly. So that's the real concern when you talk about closing a consulate, not only the one here, but also the one in Houston, closing these channels of communication, of diplomatic dialogue. The real fear is that even if it's just part of the hype going into an election and one administration or another trying to rile up their base, it's doing damage that may be irreversible. That's the concern that's been portrayed to me here, Becky.
Yeah, fascinating. And as you were talking, we were just being reminded with a loop of photographs of the sort of genial relations between Donald Trump and the Chinese president just months ago. We will see what happens next. David, thank you. Always a pleasure.